There we go. Oh, we're live. Okay. Hey, welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm here with my good friend Dan. And we are going to be talking about chapter 12 of The Soul of Money by Lynne. This is the last chapter in the book, and I don't know how long this discussion will be. It's kind of a wrap-up of the book, so we'll just kind of see what pops up in our conversation and go from there. But for those of you who are watching, if you want to join us in this discussion, jump over to mindsetmasterycollective.com. There's going to be a link below this video where you can click on the link and get to our Facebook group. And then I think it's the first post in there will be this video and a link underneath that you can join us. So if you want to add to the discussion, feel free to do so. And then, but before we get going, I want Dan to go ahead and introduce himself, and then we can talk about this chapter.
Hi, Dan Sisek here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Looking forward to going over chapter 12, and really would love to have some more people come join us because lives get busy, things happen, and some of our core people are just being really busy lately, and I'm sure they'll be back when they can, but would love to get some new thoughts and people to join in, and maybe we can help them with their lives a little bit and see things a little differently and better, like it's done for me.
Yeah, I definitely learn more from the books that we study when we have more people participating. It's like last week we talked about chapter 11, and when I'd read the chapter, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I didn't really have any, really great insights that popped up for me. I was just kind of like, okay. And but then Catherine jumped on, and she had so much value to add. She got a whole different perspective on that chapter than what I did, and I would have never even seen it that way. So I thought that it's when we all jump in that we add to our discussion. We all learn something we would have never learned before, and that's kind of how this has all gone through all of our discussions. And of course, if you want to know what Catherine had to say, there's just go back on our channel here and you'll see the previous video. And so anyway, chapter 12, it's called The Turning Tide. And in this chapter, Lynne pretty much talks about, she sums up what this whole book has been about. And it's basically just been on changing your perspective on money, from a feeling of scarcity to one of purpose. And she talks about sustainability and that sort of thing, but more than anything, I feel like the main message of what she's trying to say is just to be very purposeful in how money comes into and goes out of your life, so that instead of being so worried about, how you're going to pay your bills and how you're going to do this and how, maybe you're worried about everything when it comes to money, is to instead really think about where our money comes from, and is it something that we believe in, and then where our money goes, and is that something that we believe in. Because she truly believes that when we change our focus, then everything in our life can change, and our whole relationship with money can become, can go from being stressful to being a positive feeling. So I thought that it was just really interesting how she kind of summed this up. She was talking about at the beginning, when she said that back in 2001 that she attended an event called the Synthesis Dialogues. She said it was a gathering of 30 people who were all global activists or religious leaders or spiritual teachers. And the purpose was to engage each other with His Holiness the Dalai Lama about the state of the world. And so they each were there, and they were all sharing their perspectives, and they were learning from each other. And then when the Dalai Lama got there, he kind of wrapped everything up for everyone. He kind of was like, this is, let's see, he said that, what was he saying in here? Okay, so they're basically coming to the conclusion that the world is kind of awakening to possibility, and that things are turning in in the, in the world and in our cultures from one of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like negative to positive, basically. And they were saying, we agreed that the vision emerging in its place, and is even more from, because it used to be, she said that her thought on it was that, or what she learned from Buckminster Fuller was that, we were in this kind of you or me world. And now instead we are starting to move into a you and me world versus a you or me world. And so anyway, that's kind of what she was talking about there. Let's see. He said, oh, okay, here's the part where she was talking about what the Dalai Lama said. He said, he described the universal desire people have to be happy and avoid suffering, and the way an ethical life becomes a fulfilling life. In our relationship with money, he said, we bring the divine presence to this temple of plenty we create with an authentic and ethical relationship with the money that expands, enlarges, and magnifies its value. So let's see. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of how it starts. Any thoughts so far, Dan?
Yeah, I was gonna say when you were saying that, how she was talking about changing our perspective, I think overall on just how we view life and how we interact with life and people and events and things out there, but also that change in our focus and our perspective can also, like I said, rub off on how our money and the energy we use of transferring our money can go from being stressful. Like, and I understand that very well because I've been in a very stressful situation the last few years. Not, and the way I say it is, and I'm trying to change this perspective, is I feel I don't have enough of it. So I tend to be very much like this, but I want to open and try and, let the flow through and change my perspective and go from stressful to blissful, meaning I can be a blessing still somewhere with my intentionality and how I use my money and how I use my thoughts and how I use my energy that comes with it, because energy is something that flows everywhere and that we're all connected to and that we're all a part of, whether we realize it or not. Because just like when you walk in a room and you can get a vibe or something and feel like, oh, that person's just, uh, or this person's, oh, really, you can get that vibe just walking in somewhere or when you go into stores or here or there. So imagine with that money as we're transferring and using it, changing that perspective that we have personally and flipping it and looking at how we can bless it and use it to have it be a conduit. I'm trying to look at it and change, and that's why I posted it on the YouTube channel as well as here. Going from stressful to blissful, and that's kind of how I want to start looking at it and viewing it and changing, my internal thoughts about it. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting out of what you were just talking about and what he was saying. That um, we can have a big impact by doing that and changing our perspective and going from a you or me to you and me. That there's plenty and there's enough, and going to that sufficiency rather than scarcity uh, thought.
Yeah, she talks a lot about all of the different organizations that, are active in the world today compared to what it used to be, and how they're all working towards just bringing humanity to a higher level. And but then she also talks about, where we are at this point, at this juncture. And she shares some of the things that are still going on in here. And see, where it was she was talking about this. Uh, well, I mean, we all kind of know what's going on in the world. I guess we could say, there's still war, and she says it's a cataclysmic, scary time, and money is somewhere behind or under or running through virtually every conflict, disaster, crisis around the world and every facet of our own lives. And it's a challenging time. People worry about losing their jobs, and they're worried about how they're going to feed their families and take care of their children, and you know, the country's still investing in war, and we still have violence and rage and everything around the world. But then she also says, it's also better than what we could hope. And she says hundreds of millions of people are at work, awake to the challenges and tackling them at every level. Countless organizations and initiatives have sprung up throughout the world, addressing the basic needs of all humanity and all life. And then she goes on and she says, it's partially because the internet connects billions of us instantly, and we are experiencing our interconnectedness in potent and practical ways that make possible unprecedented cooperation and collaboration. The communications explosion has awakened our natural relatedness to each other and the awareness of the fact that we're all interconnected. And then she goes on, she just kind of like totes on all these different things that are happening that are better, such as the fact that more religious communities are recognizing diversity and teaching respect for other faiths. And that one right there, I feel like is a really big one, because for so long religion was they were teaching us separation versus inclusion, even though, like, I went to a non-denominational, or what they said was a non-denominational Christian school, which means that they were, inclusive of, other beliefs, but that was only to other Christian beliefs, And so it was kind of like this hypocritical thing where, it's like you're okay as long as you believe Christian things versus, if you're Catholic or if you're Jewish or, Muslim or whatever, that those things are not good, and but I'm seeing more and more just driving around town where there's these different churches that are non-denominational churches. Like, there's a church just down the road from us, and I think it's called Unity Church or something along that lines, where it is a multi-faith church. And I have no idea what they talk about when if you go there, because I'm not a big person on going to church, but on their signage it says, there's no judgment here, and that we, all faiths are included. And I think that's powerful, because when we start connecting more to spirituality as something that we can all express in a different way, then we realize how connected we really are, how similar we really are, and the fact that, we all want the same basic things, and how we get there is irrelevant. It's like it's no different than if I say I'm hungry and I want to eat pizza, and you say you're hungry and you want to eat bananas. It's we both are satisfying the exact same urge, we're just getting there in a different way. And I think that that's perfectly happy, or perfectly good. I mean, why not? And the more that we're able to recognize our differences and embrace them at the same time, then the less war we're going to have in the world. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Oh, that was just funny because when you talked about the differences in like when you're hungry, like you want pizza and somebody else wants tacos or something like that. I was just going to post, and I will finish posting it. The eternal war between parents, that you come in, you fix dinner for everybody, and you think, well, this sounds good. I'll fix just off the cuff meatloaf, but everybody else wants a pot roast or chicken or this, and the kids are like, like, well, you eat it or else, rather than coming at, okay, not everybody is hungry for the same thing. We all have, you know, a difference, and if we learn to say, okay, well, I'm not going to fix you that, but if you, my mom, as we got older, got to the point where, well, if you don't want something, you're old enough now, you can fix, a peanut butter and jelly. You can go fix some macaroni and cheese or something. She didn't end up having that battle because she could trust that if we were really hungry for something else, we would go and either we'd eat what she put on the table, or we would get something else. Half the time we would eat what she fixed because we're like, I'm not fixing that. Okay, I'll just eat this. But to me, in the sense, it's like how how can we, you know mesh that more in our lives and every day, and people, and how realizing that people come from the backgrounds and the things that they grew up with and learn to, for me, this has been a teaching, last couple of years have been a teaching year for me of how I interact with um, other people through one main source, but looking and seeing them for how, in my feelings, God created this person, but in the universe and infinite intelligence, supreme being, whatever you want to call it, um, created this person, and trying to see them in that picture, that big picture, and realize that our things are going to be very different and opposite to each other, but yet how do we find that common space, and that being able to still go with the thought of you and me rather than you or me, that thought of, okay, this is who they are, let me love and care about them in a general sense of like I would do anybody out there, just in general, because I think we all love the human race, if, for lack of a better way of saying it, in a general sense and purpose. It's just when we get into the dichotomies and the differences and the perceptions and beliefs we've been brought up with, that sometimes we get like this, rather than folding it back and being really out there and open and seeing those things, and sh- going with that flow and things like that, and accepting those differences, and learning to be like water, navigate, and going back to the water thing, still persevere, still be ourselves, but still be able to encompass and allow everything else to be who they are too. If any of that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure, Dan. And, and I think, what popped up for me when we were just talking about that is that, we have this kind of, or not always, but we tend to be like more likely to be instantaneously judgmental versus being curious. And, in whatever situation that is, and I see myself doing it in the stupidest stuff, like I work in retail, so I see all kinds of people from all walks of life. And something silly will happen. A person will walk in and they will be wearing some outfit that I think is just hideous. And that's the first thing that will pop into my head is I'll just be like, oh, that's hideous, And I'm like, but it's not about me, It's not about whether I like an outfit or not. It's about that other person. And just by changing my thought process to being curious about that person and what motivates them to wear that outfit in whatever way, it just changes my whole attitude. And not that I'm like all grumpy about it or anything, but it's just random thoughts that pop into your head. And if we were to, instead of instantaneously having a judgmental thought when someone acts a certain way or behave, does a certain thing or is a certain color or is a whatever, I mean, instead to just be curious about them, instead curious about their culture and curious about where they come from. It's like we have one girl that works with us and she's from Turkey. And we were talking about an annual gathering that she and her husband do every year. And she was talking about how, she likes to make food from her culture and share it with her friends. And I'm like, that's so cool. I just love that, and I was just asking her questions to learn more about her and where she comes from, and her whole upbringing is just really interesting. And what if we were that way with more people, where we just, instead of, I don't know, it's just every time we meet somebody new, it's just being very curious about them instead of having instantaneous, judgments or stereotypes or, any of that kind of thing. And I don't know, we've kind of gone off on a tangent in that, that aspect of it versus the whole money side of the discussion. Um, but I think that's a big part of it. I mean, and when we talk about financial aspects of the world, She was saying, let's see here. She was quoting Paul Ray and Sherry Anderson from their book called The Cultural Creatives, How 50 Million People Can Change the World. You know how they always say there's that like quote where it says, you know, one person can change the world or whatever. So I think that was kind of like a play on that, is the how 50 million people can change the world. And anyway, so she says, you know, we're many millions of people have taken a whole new worldview, a major development in our civilization. She says, changing a worldview literally means changing what you think is real. Changes in values, fundamental life priorities, changes in lifestyle, the way you spend your time and money, changes in livelihood, how you make that money in the first place. This is not a time of mere change. This is a time of transformation. And transformation comes not out of scarcity, but out of the context of possibility, responsibility, and sufficiency. And then she goes on, she quotes Werner Erhard and says, transformation does not negate what has gone before, rather that it fulfills it. Creating the context of a world that works for everyone is not just another step forward in human history. It's the context out of which our history will begin to make sense. And, you know, and so this kind of touches on that whole just being curious about other people and being open to other people and realizing that, you know, we're not the only one whose opinion is most important. It's, you know, it's all of us together. Oh, I was just reading what you wrote in here, Dan. Oh, you're talking about the pizza meatloaf. Okay, cool. Oh, I lost my
Well,
train of
it's
thought.
okay. I'll pick up on what you brought up that helped me with something. I think even though we got off on a tangent, like you said, I think that's where the tangent starts. I think by even just starting and looking and seeing things and being more open to differences out there in the world, that can turn help us learn and change our perceptions of things, and that in turn changes the energy into the money that we put out there and use in the world, because that's the main way of how things get done. But like we talked about in earlier chapters, the energy that's associated with that is what gets transferred. And if you decide you want to stop, building up this one particular thought where you never really looked at it, like what does this business entail? What are their thoughts? What are their missions? What do they stand for? Oh, I don't agree with those things. Let me move to somebody that does and put my money there. That again, I think if we start with the general things of people to people first, then we can, or environment or location or however you want to put it, then work that into how we use our money and where we put our money. That energy, I think, really does get transferred, and it can be that positive change of energy to help go back to, like you said, um, from being one person changing the world to the collective people that do the same thing and put their money in that same area to 50,000 people or 50 million people changing the world, like she was talking about. I think that's what she was trying to get at. I'd be
Yeah, I
done.
agree. I know. I was just sitting here reading if there was something else that I had read in here and was trying to find it, and I guess I didn't underline it. Normally I try and underline the things that jump out at me, but it may have just stuck with me and I didn't realize that I needed to underline it. But um, of course, her whole thing in this book has basically just been to change the way that we think about money entirely, across the board. And she says that in her experience, she said once the instrument or vehicle called money was in alignment with her soul, that was when prosperity, joy, sufficiency started to flourish. It wasn't in the money, but in its use of in it, excuse me, but in its use as an instrument of soul. And she says that's possible for everyone, not only at a personal level, but also on a family level, a cultural level, society wide. Lining money up with our soul, with our deepest dreams and highest aspirations is the source of our prosperity rather than simply having more of it to work with. Money used in this way connects us to the whole of life rather than money becoming an instrument that separates and fragments us from each other. That kind of prosperity is available to everyone, whether they are people with massive resources or people with moderate or fewer resources. Using money as a direct expression of one's deepest sense of self is powerful, miraculous thing. And she says, I'm still working on it, and even though she knows that this is what she's supposed to do, or this is what has made the most progress in her life, and she's seen the most changes throughout her experiences, she's still working on it. And I think that that's something that we have to recognize too, is that we can take little baby steps in our own lives and make little changes and become more aware of how money flows in and out of our lives. And once we are aware of it, then we can take steps to change those things. And and decide, do we want money to be something that is, a constant uh, stressful thing, or do we want to start having it become something that is more of a blessing in our life and a way that we can bless other people? She talks about another thing in here when she was discussing how, as a global community, the fact that we can communicate with each other faster and easier, and we can communicate with people we would have never been able to before because of the internet. She mentions these other ways that we are kind of taking control of our financial lives, in that we are able to um, work with and benefit other people in different ways. She was discussing outside of the traditional financial world, there's new and different types of currencies that are coming available, and I'm sure she was probably referring to like the digital currencies, and but other things come up also that make me realize that we are doing exchanges with each other in ways that are not necessarily with the dollar or with the yen, or or the pound, or whatever. It's when we barter with each other, those are different ways that we can make exchanges when we trade services, or we trade products, or those kind of things. Is that you know we can we can interact with each other in ways that are beneficial without it necessarily being an exchange of money. And I feel like that's really important, because then somebody who has less money can actually offer more value than what the dollar they may have in their pocket is to offer. And I think that because of that, when we start looking at other ways that we can help each other, then I don't know. I mean, maybe this whole financial aspect can start coming apart at the seams a little bit. I don't know. I mean, we start taking it into our own hands and be like, look, it's not all about the money. It can be like, well, I have this value to add to you, and you have that value to add to me. Then it comes back to each other, and I think we help each other more that way. Then I don't know. Have you ever watched those? There's that one barter show, and of course it's a TV show on cable, and the guy goes around and he barters with people, and he starts out with a goal of trying to get this one item for somebody, and he exchanges different things of different values with a number of different people until he works his way up to this one thing he's trying to find. And but it's interesting of the way that he talks with people in these shows, because or in these interactions, because he really works with the person to figure out, okay, what is it that you really want? You say you want $50 or whatever for this cordless drill, but I mean, what is it you really want? Obviously you need that $50 for some purpose. Maybe I can provide that purpose without us actually having this exchange of funds, and we can both be happy. So I don't know. I think that when we look at the world that way, we realize that there's more options available to us than just, you know, dollars that aren't even real. I mean, it's just like this digital information and the internet nowadays. I mean, it's not even a real exchange of any physical thing anymore. Um, so
I agree. I think that if we look at centuries past and how things were done, that's how things used to get done. You had a need, you worked it out with somebody, you found ways, and I'm sure even back in medieval times, you know, back in eons past, stuff, there were some monetary ways of how they, I mean, did things and stuff, but it wasn't the same exact how we look at it as dollars and signs, but it still had a monetary aspect. And but they also bartered and did things, and somebody had a horse and they needed the horse to be horseshoed, and they had a blacksmith. Maybe they would say, okay, what do you need, and he would say, well, I need iron or this or whatever. Maybe the guy said, well, in return for you doing this to get my horse to where I can go out and do what I need to do, maybe I could deliver the iron that you need as payment for you doing this. But there was no real exchange of money, but it was still a monetary transaction, so to speak, and they both got what they wanted and needed. And I think if we, went back to that aspect, and and I saw a post on my, and I want to read it. Um, in fact, maybe I can find the name of it because I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was perfect the way it was worded. And um, oh, well, it was um, basically for Americans the folly of more. Just in general, the folly of more. And and I looked at that and I said, yeah, we're always wanting more money, more this, more cars, more house. When, you know, if we look back at things and look at how that ever increasing desire for more, when we get more, are we really happier? Are we better off? You know, I go back and even to my own childhood with my grandparents and stuff who were an integral part of my life and very important to me. And it really hit me when I think when my grandfather passed away. Um, more, and then again when my grandmother passed away, it even hit me even more when I went back to their house that I would go to often a lot as a kid, and it seemed like that house was big and huge. But what I realized was the house was not big at all. It was small. But inside it felt big. And even though I was smaller, but it felt big because of the love and the comfort and the good times and overall the sense of warmth and love that I felt there that made it feel big. But it wasn't because of that it was 10,000 square feet. It was probably maybe, I'm not even going to say 2,000 square feet because it seemed small, but it seemed big to me. And in that sense, and then I look at my own house and I only have 1,200 square feet, but to me it's enough. And I used to want this big huge house. I'm realizing I really don't want that because I really don't want all the hassles of trying to keep it up, I can't keep my own house up. I have too much stuff as it is. I have more than what I really need, and I'm realizing more and more that I don't need a lot of these things because I get more out of my interactions with people and the people I care about, and how I'm living and connecting with other people in life than having more. No, I don't have a brand new car. I have to get mine fixed because I just had an accident, you know, and things like that. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get that money to pay for it. But I'm realizing that, you know, a lot of what she's saying makes is resonating more and more with me because I really want to do a flip and do some changes and be more for other people in ways of how I can bless them through, if it's money, through my money exchanges, or in how I interact with them. And I think that's what I'm getting kind of more out of this and going towards, and how this book is helping shape that.
Yeah, when you were talking about your grandparents' home, it reminded me of course, for years we've been kind of like not all over the place, but we've been here and there, and we've moved every few years, and but my daughter, she went off to college, and when she was in college, and we would be like, she's like, I'm ready to come home and visit or whatever, and she would stay home, but it would not be the same place that it was a year ago. It'd be a different place, and every time that we would move, we would still, when we would have a conversation of her coming to visit, we were always talking about her coming home. And and I know that for a lot of people, home is a place, and they're used to going back to home wherever that might be, and um but for us, it's just been wherever we are, that's home. And I don't know why that popped up for me, what we were talking about. Anyway, it was just something that came up, but it's all a matter of perspective, right? And
Well, I was going to say, at one point though, didn't you live just in a trailer? And how, and you even said so yourself. You were kind of really comfortable and satisfied without all the other stuff, and being a little bit less. But yet you said you seemed to always somehow survive. You had what you needed and things like that. And I think that was going back to what I was saying, um, how we look at things and how we let out there push us, and how she's trying to help us change that mindset of what are we really being intentional about, and what we really are wanting to do, and where are we wanting to have an impact, I guess, because we all want to make an impact. And I think that's um, kind of alluding to what I was saying. I think that's kind of what you were even kind of alluding to when you were just sharing about your daughter.
yeah, I think so. And I think it's more than anything, it is just a matter of changing, your perspective. And when you were talking about the more aspect, and Lynn talks about that too. I mean, she shares the fact, I mean, more is not sustainable. It's never achievable. I mean, because you get something more, and then you want something bigger than that. You get a bigger house, and then you want a bigger house, and if you get more things. So we moved from a 2-bedroom apartment into this 3-bedroom house with a garage. And, when we were in that apartment, we had some stuff, and then we moved here and we have more stuff, and it just keeps accumulating. It's like, just, I don't know what it is, just more stuff just keeps coming in. And of course, if we were to get a bigger place, it would be even more stuff. It just keeps, just, that's, I don't know what it is. Like, if you have a space, it just needs to be filled with stuff, but it's not sustainable, because I mean, even when, I mean, when you achieve something, some higher level of, say, in your career or in life or money level or whatever, then you get to that level, and you're like, oh wait, I got to get more, and you're never happy, you're never satisfied with it. It's just, and so unless we do change our perspective on what it is that we truly want. And I think the biggest thing is, we all want to be happy, but for some reason we have it twisted in our head that more is how you're happy. And when I was living in our trailer in that campground, it wasn't about the stuff. It was, we had everything that we needed to survive. And we had, had food, we had shelter, we had, for me, I need nature, and that was a big aspect of it. Maybe it was because I had so much nature, I didn't need more stuff. I don't know, and but it wasn't, for my husband, he wasn't happy with that, because he wants more. He's got to have more. And but it's just a matter of I mean, what is it that's most important? Because for me, you know I'm happy if I can just be connecting with the nature, and spending time with my family, and maybe I work a little bit to make sure I have food on my table, but that's, you know, it's family and that sort of thing that's more important to me than having stuff. And I think that's where we need to kind of change our perspective. Although she has some thoughts down here at the bottom of this chapter, and I'll go ahead and read them to you because, of course, everybody's ideas of what makes you happy is going to be different. And and maybe, you know, being a successful whatever you are in your career, maybe that's highly important to you. But what is the level of success that you need to achieve before you can allow yourself to be happy? Because that's the other thing too, is that if you're not allowing yourself to be happy in the achievements you've made so far, you're not going to allow yourself to be happy once you achieve the next level of achievement. And so, you know, I was reading a book a while back, and it was, what is it called? I think it was The Art of Happiness, written, I can't remember the author's name, but it was along with the Dalai Lama, and they were talking about happiness, and you have to be happy, you know, choose to be happy first. That's where it is. So like, you can choose to be happy in any situation, and if you don't allow yourself to be happy in the first place, doing something or getting some stuff or achieving some additional level of success is not going to get you there. You have to be there first. So, okay. So anyway, okay, so here's the last thing, her kind of wrap up for pretty much the whole book here. She says, okay, I challenge you to use your money, every dollar, every penny, every purchase, every stock, and every bond to voice this transformation. I challenge you to use the money that flows through your life, and it does flow through all of our lives, to express the truth and context of sufficiency. I challenge you to move the resources that flow through your life towards your highest commitments and ideals, those things you stand for. I challenge you to hold money as a common trust that we're all responsible for in using ways that nurture and empower us and all life, our planet, and future generations. I challenge you to imbue your soul with, or your money with soul, your soul, and let it stand for who you are, your love, your heart, your word, and your humanity.
Wow, that's powerful to because and this comes from her speaking through her journey and what she's learned and the things she's learned. And of course, not every single person is going to have that same exact journey, but if we take up her challenge, I think it helps us move towards becoming the best person that we can be because then we do go back to being true, I think, to who we are, but bringing out the honest self that wants to go out and do what we want for other people. And that's where I think the greatest impact and greatest flow of energy and, for lack of a better word, love that will get put out that can transcend all the going back to the you or me stage and all the disdain, the power hungry, the hate that is out there. And I think this is one way of how we work towards that because then we take the power out of money and give it back to us to have it flow where we want it to go. And I think that's what's happened in our society is the power has been allotted to and given to money in a false sense that it doesn't rightfully own and deserve because it's an inanimate thing. It has no say, but yet it drives a lot of decision making rather than the decision making being held with us and the powers and the choices that we make. And it's just a conduit for how it's done.
I think you're right, Dan. This has been a good book, and you know, at first I thought this is going to be like some kind of book on, you know, tips for how, I don't know, how to better manage your money or something like that. And I was like, well, you know, but at the same time, I'm like, she's got to have more of a message if she's talking about the soul of money. And I do like the fact that she kind of challenges us to change our perspective on money. And, and when I was talking about the happiness aspect of our lives is, I think that we all kind of want the same thing as, we all just want to be happy. And that may seem simple, but yet it's not that simple. It's a very complicated thing because our definitions of happiness are all different. And but I kind of wonder if we can really boil down to what it is exactly that makes us happy, and the true things that make us happy, not just those momentary feelings of happiness when we eat a really good pizza. I mean, but the things that really make us happy, where you can sit there and feel truly content. And when you feel that, is recognize it. Why am I feeling so content in this moment, and how can I add to that? How can I uh, change my life around to support this feeling right here versus everything else that I think I'm supposed to do in order to get this feeling that I'm having right here? I don't know. So I feel like we're trying so hard to achieve this goal of becoming happy when we've already got it, and we just have to quit making it more difficult than it has to be. So anyway, that's it for this week. Dan, unless you've got something else to add to it.
No, I think we had a great discussion, and I think um, I would recommend this book to anybody because um, I was kind of like you. I was like, okay, then somebody brought it up, and for some odd reason, it kind of just piqued an interest in me, and I really wasn't sure what to expect. Um, but I've been pleasantly surprised and pushed and made me think how I look and interact at money. And just now in this week's discussion, how talking about the power of money that it has, I think, usurped from us in our lives, um, that has been given to it that it really, like I said, doesn't rightfully deserve. That power belongs to us, and it's just the conduit through which we use the mechanism of how we work towards what we want, but don't let it be the thing that castrates you from being able to do and put your energies where you rightfully want to put it. And but we also have given up that, you know, in essence, we've given up a lot of those rights, to money, and now it's time for us to take it back. And I'm going to be working on that. That's one of the goals I'm going to be looking at is changing where I, put my money, what I do with my money, how I look at it, and how I treat it, um, as the tool that it is, because it is really a tool. And we talked about that before in other books and other lessons. And I think this book drove that idea home for me that it really is a tool. It is not the master and sole thing of my life that I have to let it take control and be the power that it has in so many people's lives. And I think this book will help people see that.
I agree. I definitely recommend this book too. So, well, guys, this has been a great discussion. And for those of you who are watching, if you've made it this far in this video, then get down below this video. There's a link there. You can join us in our Facebook group and connect with us. Send me a message. I'm Samantha Studebaker Carl, or send Dan Sissick a message and say, hey, I want to join and be a part of your discussion. And we'll make sure and send you the link the next time we have a hangout. And so this is the last chapter of this book. So we'll be studying Atomic Habits by James Clear for the next one. I want to give everybody a couple of weeks to get that book. So we'll probably meet again on, let me look at the calendar here. Let's go with April 6th. I don't think that's a holiday. So April 6th, we'll get back together and we'll start the next book. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.